There's a moment that always gives it away. A room full of people, eyes locked on a screen, hearts racing over something they can't control. Someone shouts, someone celebrates, someone feels like they belong, and you feel nothing. Not boredom, not confusion, just distance. And that's when the question forms in their eyes, what's wrong with you? But what if nothing is wrong at all? What if the people who don't care about sports aren't missing something, but seeing something others can't? Because once you understand what's happening inside the brain, what chemicals are firing, what instincts are being triggered, what needs are being fed, the obsession stops looking harmless. It starts looking engineered. When sports fans watch their team play, their brains release oxytocin. That's the bonding hormone, the chemical responsible for loyalty, for trust, for family. Their nervous system doesn't know it's just a game. It registers kin. The jersey becomes a symbol, the team becomes a tribe, and the brain quietly whispers, "These are your people." That's why criticism feels personal. That's why losses feel devastating. That's why strangers suddenly feel like brothers. People who don't care about sports, their brains don't make that leap. Psychologists describe them as having lower tribal dependency. Their identity doesn't need to dissolve into a group to feel real. They don't outsource belonging. A 2019 study found they show far less us versus them thinking. They don't automatically divide the world into allies and enemies, and that makes them harder to control. But the real hook isn't bonding, it's addiction. Every game is a dopamine machine, anticipation, release, suspense, relief, over and over, not because the outcome matters, but because it's uncertain. The human brain is vulnerable to unpredictability. Intermittent reward is the most addictive pattern known to psychology. It's why slot machines work. It's why gambling ruins lives. And it's why sports fandom feels harmless until it isn't. fMRI scans show that watching your team activates the same reward circuits as gambling. The brain doesn't distinguish meaning, only stimulation. People who don't care about sports don't get this hit. Not because they're cold, but because their dopamine systems aren't wired for vicarious risk. And in many cases, that wiring is genetic. Research suggests dopamine receptor variations predict how drawn someone is to spectator competition, meaning your indifference may not be rebellion, it may be biology. Then there's the identity distortion. When a team wins, fans say, "We won." When the team loses, suddenly it's "they lost." This is called basking in reflected glory, borrowed achievement, second-hand pride. People who don't engage in this tend to have a more consistent self-concept. Their worth doesn't rise and fall with outcomes they can't influence. Their confidence isn't outsourced. And that stability can feel threatening to people who rely on collective highs to feel alive. Now, here's the uncomfortable part. Sports fans often score higher in certain forms of empathy. They care deeply, intensely about people they've never met. But empathy is finite. When you pour it into symbols, logos, teams, rivalries, it has to come from somewhere else. Non-sports people tend to invest that empathy differently, into relationships that respond, into causes that change, into work that creates. A 2021 study found they score higher in openness to experience, art, beauty, ideas, complexity. They still crave transcendence. They just don't get it from watching someone else chase it. And for some, not caring about sports is a scar, a memory of exclusion, of being the wrong kind of person, of not fitting the script. For others, it's simply clarity. They see adults screaming at screens and feel no pull, no spell. Here's why sports fans and non-sports rarely understand each other. They're chasing meaning in different ways. Sports fans find meaning in narrative, the comeback, the rivalry, the illusion that chaos has structure. Non-sports people see that randomness and ask a dangerous question. Why should this matter to me? They prefer direct engagement, where effort affects outcome, where energy returns something real, where presence isn't simulated. Psychologists call this parasocial investment versus lived experience. One is safer, one is riskier. And here's the quiet truth. People who don't obsess over sports often report feeling more present. They're not spending hours emotionally bleeding for outcomes that reset next week. They're in their own struggle, their own arc, their own story. So if you don't care about sports, you're not missing out. Your brain just refuses to be hijacked. Your identity doesn't dissolve easily. Your dopamine isn't cheap. The next time someone looks at you strangely and asks, "Did you see the game?" Understand this: you're not disconnected, you're unhooked. And in a world built on distraction, that might be the most dangerous trait of all. If this made sense to you, you'll want to understand why quiet people process reality differently and why that difference is often mistaken for weakness. Click one of these videos. You're not like the crowd, and you never were.